Well, I suppose most of us have got a place that we don't really want to show, don't want other people to see too much, because it doesn't show our best side. But I'm going to show you this field, which has been heavily grazed through the winter. They've been stock out here this winter, and we're going to freshen it up, reseed, overseed this field. That's the plan. I wanted to show you what's happening here with this bit of bracken. See this here? There's a bit of bracken coming up, which shows there's good soil underneath. All the old boys will tell you that. But it's starting to come up like this, you see. And what I've done is, as I've come up here with the tractor and with the quad bike this spring, I've actually focused on running over as much as I can of this bracken. And what happens is it discourages it, funnily enough. You give it a beating and look, you go from that, where I haven't run over it, to that, where I have. And you can see again where I haven't run over it over there. This bit in the middle has had a beating, and it's beaten it almost out of existence by just running over it and battering it. Can't life feel a little bit like that? Life's not easy, it's a challenge sometimes, and we have to take a bit of a beating, a bit of a battering. And we can all identify with that. I could give you story after story. But that's, in some way, it's really very much part of human experience. We take a beating, and it knocks us back, it knocks us down, and yeah, it has a sort of effect, you see, on that bracken over there, discouraging it. It's only discouraging that, knocking the life out of it, and sapping its resources. That's why it goes down. You sort of crushed it and broken it, and it's losing its resources in that process. The juice is coming out of it. You see, the thing with this bracken is that it's got a big, well, its house really is under the ground. Its big tubular structure is underground. That's where its strength is, and the sap comes up from there and makes the tops. And as you break it off, as you batter it around, the sap leaks out, and the strength coming from below is sapped out of the stalks. Why am I telling you this? Well, Psalm 32, interestingly enough, says this. It's David. He says, "Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered." And now he's going to tell us a story about himself. David says, this is my experience. He says, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long." Not a great experience. "For day and night," he says, "your hand," that's God's hand, "was heavy upon me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I'll confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin." Did you get that? He was really going through it. He was battered. He was having a rough old time. And he sees it as from God. He says, well, your hand was on me. You were trying to teach me something. My strength in that experience was sapped as in the heat of summer. And now, says David, I can see why you were doing it. I'd done things I hadn't been doing. My life had been lived in a particular way. I'd done some stuff. And well, your hand was heavy on me and my strength was sapped. It wasn't doing me any good. And then I acknowledged my sin to you, and here's the hopeful bit, here's the way back. I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. Not anymore. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. And that was the turning point. As he turned back to God, discovered what it was that was blocking off the flow of life-giving energy then, if you like, sap, into him, recognized it, acknowledged it, didn't cover up anymore. No more hiding. No more playing hide and seek with God. Put it all out there before him, confessed his sin, and God restored the relationship and the flow of life-giving energy from God into his heart. You know, it's quite interesting with this group of cows and calves here up on the hill here. They've got to an age now where they're a bit independent, and they tend to play hide and seek from time to time with their mothers. And they'll go away and they'll clear off, and you hear the mother calling, come back here, you know, and you can tell there's a particular note, a particular tone which says, "Oi, come here," and the relationship has to be reconnected and restored. And of course, these calves are still dependent on mother's milk. They'll do a little bit on by themselves, of course, on their own. Find a bit of grass, something nice and tasty somewhere, and but then they really need to restore that relationship for the life-giving milk to be found again. Restore the relationship with Mum. I'm sorry, can I have a drink? Yes, fine, on you go. And the life-giving milk is restored to them. And we ourselves, in our own turn, we are left to get on with life very much, and then come back and keep coming back to the Lord and restoring that relationship, and having the source of life to us restored again, and having the nourishment and the life restored to us, put back into us on days like this. Hot, it's been a hot day here in the heart of Wales again, and baking. You can see the ground in the video there is really parched, and it's the deep-rooted things like the bracken and these buttercup weeds here that they can go a bit deeper down and find the source of water and find life and energy again. It's been a day when a nice glass of milk, you know, be quite nice now. Quite fancy one as I go back down. But look, there's that need for the calf to come back to the mother. There's the need for David to go back to his God, because his strength is sapped as in the heat of summer. And to confess his sin, to restore the relationship, and then to have life put back into him. And so it is with us. There are times when life is going hard. We've wandered off and we try to stay off from God. And we need to get that relationship restored. And as we do so, we find the Lord Jesus Christ, by his life-giving death on the cross, restores that relationship, deals with the sin. We confess, as David says, and the Lord Jesus restores by his goodness and grace. Not because we deserve it, but because he wants us back. There you are. There's my word for the week. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I said, I'll confess my sin, my iniquity to the Lord, and he forgave the guilt of my sin. May it be our experience that he refreshes our lives from the battering we've taken in the course of life away from him. And may he do that for us afresh this week. God bless you. Have a great week.